Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to PhotoBiz Live. This is Joanne with the PhotoBiz team, and today we're joined by Jim Zuckerman for a webinar about the best technique in Photoshop. The underlying technique that allows you to be ultra creative in Photoshop is putting two or more pictures together. Everyone can apply filter effects, tweak color and contrast, and add textures, but to really stand out from the crowd, you need to know how to composite images and make the results believable. You can check out Jim's free photo insights easy too by going to jimzuckerman.com. In addition to getting the opportunity to learn from Jim in today's webinar, we'll also have a question and answer session at the end of the webinar. You can submit your questions using the chat tool and they'll be answered after the presentation. You can also join in the discussion on Twitter by using the hashtag #PhotobizLive. If at any point during today's webinar you have any difficulty hearing the speaker or seeing the slides, please use the comment box and let us know. We'll also be recording this webinar and it'll be available for replay on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/photobiz. With that being said, I'll turn things over to Jim.
Thank you, Joanne, and thank you for inviting me to do this webinar. Hello, everybody. I'm going to demonstrate for you some of my favorite Photoshop techniques, and that is the ability to cut out a picture and replace a background. One of the tools that most people are intimidated by is the pen tool, so I'm going to show you why it's so valuable and how to use it. First, let me start with this photograph of a classic car. One of the reasons that photographers photograph details of classic cars at these car shows is because it's very difficult to get a photograph of the entire car so it looks clean against a nice background. There's always distractions. For example, this building, another car, people in the background, in a pale sky that doesn't look very good. The car is beautiful, but I really need a better background. And let me show you what the goal is. The goal is to produce a picture like this. The car looks like it's in this new environment. It's absolutely beautiful, complete depth of field, and everything works. Okay, let me show you how we're going to get there. The pen tool is this tool right here. It's the tool that shows an old ink nub of a pen. And the way the pen tool works, we're going to blow this up. When I use the pen tool, I typically use it at 300 or 400%. Right now we're at 300%. I click on the pen tool, and what it does, it lays down what Photoshop calls anchor points. These are basically dots that you lay along the periphery of the subject. Here, let's blow this up to 400%. And this allows you to be extremely precise. When you get to an area where the subject and the background are very close in tone, this tool enables you to separate them without any guesswork, without any problems at all. So when you are using the pen tool on a straight edge, you can put the dots further apart. But then when you go to a curve, you want to make them closer together so you can define the shape of the curve and make it as smooth as it should be, just like this. So I'm not going to do the entire car because I've already done it, and of course this is just a demonstration. I don't want to waste your time watching me put down all of these anchor points. But you can see how precise this is. And it doesn't go too slow. You can do this whole car in probably 15 minutes. That's not that big a deal. So let me go back down, and I'm going to show you how I would cut the car out of the background. But first, let me just finish this very quickly, not being precise at all. But I just want to show you the strategy that I use in selecting the whole car. So I would go around the hood ornament very precisely, down past the grille, the headlamp, and obviously, as I said, this is not accurate right now because it's just a demonstration, but you'll get the idea. So I'm going to come down here along the tire, and I'm going to stop it about right here. So I'm going to go from this point over to the edge, put a dot right there, and then in the upper right hand corner, and then in the upper left hand corner, and then down right level where I started from, right here. And then finally I'm going to connect this dot to the first one I put down, and you can see a little circle right next to the pen nub, and that tells you that you're closing a circuit. I click there, and now what I've got is a path. I don't have a selection yet. So I'm going to go into the Paths palette. You should always have open here. Let me bring this to the middle of the screen so it's really clear. You should always have the Layers, Channels, and Paths open, because when you have this path and you click the Paths palette, you now have this little teeny icon here, and if you click it, you've got a submenu, and you go Make Selection. This is what most people forget, but it's so easy to remember if you just remember that you access it. Here, let me cancel that. You access it from this little icon when the Paths palette is selected. So we choose Make Selection, and I always choose a 1 pixel feather radius, always just 1 pixel. The reason I do that is because it makes the edge just soft enough to accept another background, and so the original photograph and the background, they blend together perfectly. If it's a 2 pixel feather, that edge is just a little bit too blurred. So what I've got now is, here, let me put this palette back. What I've got now is a selection of the background. Now if you look closely, you can see that I didn't get exactly at the edge, so I can take the rectangular marquee tool, hold the shift key down because that adds to my selection, and just grab that edge like that, and down here, and on this side. Okay, now let's say you've spent 15-20 minutes, and some selections are even more complex, and they will take half an hour. You don't want to do that again. You want to save the selection, and so what you do is you go under Select, Save Selection. And you can give it a name, but if you don't give it a name, and I never do, Photoshop just calls it Alpha 1 and Alpha 2 and so on. So you go OK. Then you can recall that selection by going here, let me deselect, select deselect. You can go select Load Selection to recall it, and then you have Alpha 1, 2, 3, 4, it depends on how many alpha channels you have. The reason why there's so many here is because not only did I have to select the background, but I had to select inside the windows. And let me show you what you have to do sometimes. In this particular case, I had to grab this area, that's one selection. This one in here, that's another one. And then we have in here, and there's a windshield wiper. So this area is one, and this little section up here is another. And then there's a section here, inside the steering wheel, etc. So there's quite a few selections that you have to do, again with the pen tool, and yeah, that takes time, but when you're done, you can put any background in there you want, and it's perfectly believable. So right now we have a number of selections. One I just did just now as I was demonstrating, and the others I did before. And if you hit the Channels palette, here are all of the selections. The last one, Alpha Channel 9, if I hold the Command key or the Control key on the keyboard and click it, it brings back the selection just as if I would have gone Select Load Selection. So those are two ways to bring the selection back into play. Either select Load Selection, or you choose the alpha channel you want and you click on it as you hold the Command key down or the Control key. If you want to grab all the alpha channels together, you can hold the Command key as well as the Shift key and click them all, and it'll accumulate and you'll get one big selection out of all the little ones. So now that we have our selection, in fact, let me actually use let me deselect and bring back the real selection, which is really precise with all the windows that I did beforehand. And now let's open up the background image. Here is a photograph, a landscape I did in Ireland. I'm going to go select all. The shortcut for that is Command or Control A for all. And then I will go Edit, Copy. And when you go Edit, Copy, or Command or Control C, there's the shortcut, it puts this picture into the clipboard. The clipboard is what Photoshop calls a temporary holding place. It holds a picture or a part of a picture ready to be pasted into something else. So I went Select All and Edit, Copy. And if you're working fast and you use keyboard shortcuts, it's Command A, Command C, or Control A, Control C. So now this picture is in the clipboard. I bring back this image, I activate it, and now to put the picture all back here through the windows, all I do is go Edit, Paste Special, Paste Into. Now if you're using CS4 or earlier, you won't have Paste Special, it'll just be Edit, Paste Into. But I think in CS5 they changed this, and Adobe have you now go to Edit, Paste Special, Paste Into, and it pastes that landscape into the background. You can now see it through the windows. And then if you click on the Move tool, you can now move this around as you wish. So if I bring this up, I can now have the grass in the background blend with the grass in the foreground. And of course this needs some blending and maybe a little color change. And over here I need to use the clone tool to take care of this. But you can see how perfect this is. If I enlarge this, let me show you the edge of the car and how it blends with the background. This is 300%. It's absolutely perfect. Look at all along here. It's just as if it was really there. This is why you want only a 1 pixel feather. Remember when you made the selection in the Paths palette. Okay, and so now what I will do is when I like the position of my layer, I will flatten the layers with Layer, Flatten Image, and now I can very easily blend these with the healing brush perhaps. I will make the brush a little bigger with my bracket keys. That's a shortcut. The right bracket makes it bigger. The left bracket makes this brush and many other brushes smaller. So let me just, let's see, bring the grass up there. There, you see how nicely that blends together? Now there's a color differential. This is a little bit yellowish, this is more blue, and I could address that easily in the hue and saturation dialog box. But I'm not going to do that now because for this webinar, I just want to show cutting and pasting. So over here, I would take the, let's see, that's the healing brush. No, we don't want that. We want the clone tool. So make my brush bigger with the bracket keys, bring the grass up here, and then I'll do some blending there. And of course, to make this really, really precise, I'll blow this way up. We're at 200% right now. Make the brush smaller and bring that right up against the tire like that. Okay, so this is how you use the pen tool. With the pen tool, let me show you. If you make a mistake, here, let's say you're going along this edge and you make a mistake. It's very easy to make a mistake with the pen tool because you can be so magnified that you sort of forget, or you lose the feeling of where the edge is. You have to blow it back down to see. So here's our mistake. You can use the pen minus tool. If you click on the pen tool, there's other tools hidden beneath, and this one here, it says delete anchor point tool, or pen minus. So you can click minus here, delete all these points like this, undo this, and then go back to the pen tool where you started from, click on the last point you put down, click, and then continue. And that's how you can fix your mistakes. Okay, so that's the pen tool. Let me close this and close this. Now, let me show you a picture. Here, let me take these off of my desktop. Let me show you a picture where the pen tool would be impossible. Here's a photograph I took in Africa, and I've always liked the image because the elephant is a little higher than the eye level. We were in a little depression, the vehicle was, and the elephant was up on a rise, and it made him look really impressive. But the sky is horrible. It's distracting, it's ugly, and it needs to be replaced. But look at the foliage. How can you possibly use the pen tool or any other tool to cut around that? The answer, you can't. It's not just that this is difficult, it would be impossible. And if you really want to spend 3 hours or 4 or 5 hours trying to cut out this all of these grasses and bushes and these blades of grass sticking up, if you really tried to do it, it would never work. And the reason why it won't work is because these plants, they don't just end and the background begins. There's a transition zone. If you look at this that's too much. If you look at this very closely, the edge here, you have 2 or 3 or 4 pixels where the white sky blends in with the grass. And that's not just a sharp edge. And that's why you can't just replace it with the background by cutting and pasting using the pen tool as the basis, because it'll never ever look real. So how do you do that? Okay, I'm going to show you a really cool technique. We're going to use this cloud picture in place of the white sky. Now, why a picture like this? Because with a white sky, the lighting is soft and diffused, and with this kind of cloudy picture, you have the same exact kind of lighting, soft and diffused. But of course, this sky is a lot more interesting than just solid white. So, here's how we do it. We take our cloud picture and we go select all and edit copy. Again, this puts this picture in the clipboard, and the picture that we had previously in the clipboard, that background from Ireland, got bounced out. The clipboard can only hold one picture at a time, or a part of a picture at a time. So this cloud picture is now in the clipboard. What I'm going to do is paste this picture on top of the elephant picture. I'm not going to go paste into because I don't have a selection. I'm just going to go paste. So that's edit, paste, or the shortcut Command or Control V. Okay, so now the cloud picture is a floating layer over the elephant picture. If we go into the layers palette, you can see here's the elephant, here are the clouds, and with this little eye icon, if I click on it, it turns the clouds off and you can see the underlying photograph. Let's click it back. And so now we have, again, the cloud picture floating over the elephant. So I'm going to make now a layer mask. In the layers palette, at the bottom row, you have these icons, And right next to the FX, you have this little icon here. It's a rectangle with a gray circle in the middle. And if I click it, that makes a layer mask. A layer mask is just a term that Photoshop uses. It really comes from darkroom work years ago when we used film. But for now, all it allows us to do is show the clouds in one part of the elephant picture and not show them in another. And I'll show you how to do that in a second. First, we have to make our foreground and background color boxes black and white respectively. So this is the foreground color box. It's black and the background is white. We have our layer mask. And now I'm going to click on the gradient tool. The gradient tool is not understood very well. Yes, it blends one color into another, but most photographers don't really need that. But in this context, we're going to blend our mask basically. So I've clicked on the gradient tool. I'm going to take my cursor from the bottom of the frame and drag it all the way to the top and release it. Okay, here's our mask, here's our layer mask, and you can see at the bottom it's black, and so that's preventing the clouds from showing through. At the top it's white, or basically clear, allowing the clouds to show through. So what we've done is we've blended the clouds with the grass. Now you can vary the way the clouds blend by how you drag the cursor. If we drag this again, let's say we start at the bottom and we stop right here at the ear, and I release it, look how much lower the clouds are. So now, instead of having a lot of white down here, we filled this in with clouds. If I start higher and I drag it up to here, again you see it changes a little bit. If I start down here and drag it here, we brought the clouds a little bit lower. So now the background is really interesting. It's natural the way the clouds blend down to the horizon, but the elephant is still in the clouds. How do we deal with that? Well, I'll show you how we deal with that, but I have to backtrack. So what I'm going to do is take my cloud picture and the layer mask and drag it to the trash. I'll do it again in a minute. But first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take the quick selection tool, which hides under the magic wand, and I'm going to make a rough selection. Well, I shouldn't say it's a rough selection. I'm going to make a selection of the top of the elephant. The quick selection tool clings to the edge of your subject, particularly when there's a very clean delineation between the subject and the background. So, okay, I'm going to forget about the bottom of the elephant, but what I've done here is make a nice selection around the edge of the elephant, and just to make sure that I eliminate any telltale evidence of that white sky, here, let me blow this up. I'm going to show you, if you look at this really carefully, here's our transition zone. And so somewhere along here, there could be, like right here. Let me make this a little smaller. You see right there, a little bit of white. Here's a little bit of white. Here's a little bit of white from the sky. You don't want any of that showing. I'm going to shrink the selection, contract it by 1 pixel. This is the secret weapon of compositing images. I'm going to go Select, Modify, Contract. You can also, this is Expand. Here's Contract. You can also go Expand. So if I had selected the background, I might go Expand. But I've selected the elephant, so I'm going to go Contract. I'm going to hit Contract, 1 pixel. I could go more, but all I need here is 1, so watch. Let me undo that and redo that by hitting Command Z. This is undo and redo. You see how my selection contracts just 1 pixel. Okay, so now I'm going to go Feather, Select, Modify, Feather, not contract here, but Feather. That softens the edge just slightly just like we did with the pen tool. I go OK. Now I'm going to go Select, Save Selection. OK. Let's bring this back down now. And let me make my layer mask again, and I'll show you why this is so important. I'll go Select Deselect. Now I can always recall it. Select Load Selection, Alpha 1, and there's my selection. Okay. I made the selection around the elephant, and here is why it is so important that I did that. I'm going to bring back the layer mask with the clouds. So I'm going to go Edit, Paste. The cloud photograph is still in the clipboard. And now I'm going to use this icon to make my layer mask. I'm going to go back to the gradient tool and make this gradation of the clouds from clear at the bottom to dense at the top. In the channels palette, here is my selection, Alpha 1. I hold down the Command key or the Control on a PC and I click it. Here's my selection. So now I'm going to go to the Brush tool, and with the foreground, background color boxes still black and white, I'll take the Brush tool and brush away the clouds from the elephant. And the reason why we have a selection is because these marching ants, the selection, constrains the brush tool from affecting the surrounding clouds. And now when I deselect, select, deselect, you can see that the result is perfect. The clouds now blend with the grass, the elephant doesn't have any clouds on it, and now the picture is successful as opposed to before it was horrible. So this is how you can use the gradient tool and the layer mask to blend clouds into foliage. The final technique I'm going to show you is related to what I just demonstrated with the elephant. Let me close this. We're going to keep the cloud picture open because we're going to use it. And now let me show you a photograph that I totally transformed from sort of nice but mediocre into something really, really dynamic. This is the original photograph. The tree is shaped beautifully. I really liked it, but I wanted a little more color in the leaves. And of course the white sky here is terrible. We have power lines over here. We've got a sign and car and a road and stuff over here that we don't want. So I cleaned up all this with the clone tool. And I ended up with this picture. I use hue and saturation to intensify the colors of the tree. But of course you have that white sky. And leaves present a particularly challenging problem because you have all of this incredible detail. And let me show you an attempt at making a strong picture. Here's a photograph that I actually sold several times. From a distance it looks beautiful, but if you look closely at the leaves, the way the leaves blend with the sky is just not quite right. Plus you have all of this little white stuff in here, but the edge is, it's almost there but not quite. And I had that picture for 5 years until I figured out how to solve that problem. Well, let's go back to this picture. And let me show you something. When you're on the gradient tool, here's the gradient tool. When you click it, in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, in the toolbar, you have these little 5 icons right here. The one that we used for the elephant was the far left. It makes just a straight gradient. But now we're going to use the one right next to it, the circular gradient. And watch what happens. This is really interesting. Here's the same cloud picture. So let's say we didn't have this in the clipboard. What we would do, here, let me deselect. We would go select all and edit copy, just like before. So now this picture is in the clipboard again, and I'm going to paste it on top of this picture with edit, paste, just like that. Now, we have the gradient tool. We have the second icon, which is the radial gradient. So now we have to make our layer mask. So we click on the layers palette, and here's our little layer mask icon. Okay, now if we take, and again, the foreground, background color boxes are black and white. If we take the gradient tool and the cursor and drag it to the side, let's say up in the corner here, look what happened. The clouds now blend with the leaves perfectly. Now there's a little bit of cloud on the tree, and we'll deal with that just like we did before. But look at the edge. It's completely just like the original. So we can adjust how much blending we get by, varying the length of the line. We can do that. We can do a longer line. So let's leave this as it is right now. And I'm going to go back to the brush tool, and now I will use the bracket key to make it larger, and I'm going to brush away the clouds from the ground. I can brush away the clouds from the tree, and I can make the brush smaller to get near the edge. Now what I can also do is lower the opacity of the brush to, let's say, 45%. So now it'll take the clouds away from the tree, but it'll do it gently. So you don't have to get to the very edge because it blends with the clouds so nicely. And maybe those edge leaves are a little bit dark because of the clouds, and we could even lower the opacity more to get those. So let's do that. Let's lower the opacity to, let's say, here's 28%. And if I blow this up and work precisely, you can see how we can lighten up those leaves but still leave this edge untouched. And so you can work all around the tree, and it's just magic, absolutely magic. And then down at the horizon, you can do the same thing. Let's increase the opacity just a little bit, and we can brush this away. And then as we get up here, we can lower the opacity. Here's 16%. Let me make this big. I'm doing this quickly for demonstration purposes, but you can see how you can blend manually the clouds with this foliage. And if you have a little light area here, let's lower the opacity even more. Here is 10%. There, you see? Look at that. Do the same thing over here. Here, let's increase this a little bit and make the brush smaller. And now what you end up with is a perfect replacement of a white sky with clouds using the radial gradient. So that's it for this webinar. I can take some questions now. Joanne, you have some questions for me?
Sure, we can. We've had a couple questions come in. Pam had a question. She said, beautiful work and thank you for sharing how you do this. And she asks, what do you do with reflections of people in windows? Do you clone those out as well, or how do you handle those?
Hi, Pam. Thank you for your compliment. Reflections of people in windows. Well, there are reflections and there are reflections. What I mean by that is if the person is inside the building looking out, that's one thing. If they're outside and you see them reflecting in the window, that's something else. It depends upon what you're photographing, and it depends upon what you want. If I don't want a reflection, and with these classic cars, they're very shiny. And I'm working on a coffee table book of these cars, and sometimes the cars are parked too close together and there's a reflection that I just don't want. So in that case, I will clone it out if possible. And I say if possible because sometimes, see if I can show you an example. Well, see, this is not a great example, but let's say there's a big reflection in, let's see if I can make my cursor more there. Let's say if there's a big reflection right here, you have to have enough area either here or here to borrow from to clone over it. With respect to the windows in the cars, I replaced that entirely with the background. And in order to make the window look like glass instead of just seeing through an open area, I will select the window area and fill it with about 20% of white. Just that little bit of milkiness makes the glass look more like glass, like you're looking through something instead of looking through nothing. So if you had a particular picture in mind, I could answer you more specifically, but generally that's how I would answer you without seeing what you're talking about.
She did respond and indicate that she was actually referring specifically to the picture of the car in the cliff scene that had people in the windows.
Okay, you mean like right here? Well, there are some, oh yes, there's reflections here. Yes, okay, here's a good one. So what I would do here, if I wanted to get rid of this, I mean, the trees don't bother me. Even this flag doesn't really bother me. But if it did, I would use the pen tool, and I would select inside the window. I could even get rid of these things here or keep them. Either way, I'd probably keep them because they're part of the car. I'd select all this area here, and first I would fill it with black, and then I would fill it with maybe 30% opacity of a forest. Because look at these trees here. See, this looks like it was filled with maybe 25–30% opacity. But this is how a reflection looks like in glass. And so first I'd fill it with black to get rid of this stuff, and then I would grab a forest scene, go special paste in here, and adjust the opacity in the layers palette. Well, I don't have a layer here, but here, let me make a layer. Okay, now I have a layer, and so I would use this opacity slider to, here, you see how this layer looks just like this, except it wasn't forest. Actually, what I could do, let me take this right here, copy that, and then I'll paste it. Let's just put it right here. And now we can lower the opacity, and you see, it looks like, or here, if we move it against the black, there, look. See, look, they look the same. This is the real reflection, and this is what I made. So that's how I would handle it. Good question.
Great, thank you for that. Let's see. Larry has a question, and he asks, can you explain why the pen tool is preferable to the polygon lasso tool with selecting?
The pen tool is completely precise, and when you go around here, let me open this car picture up again. The polygon tool clings to, see, if you're going around this curve, it works just fine. But what if the background were like this? In fact, the background is like this, and you have a curvature here. the polygon tool is not going to be able to distinguish between these two tones. That's the problem. So it works sometime, but you can spend so much time correcting tools that didn't work exactly correctly because you're trying to do it shorter. In the end, you spend more time doing it. So I just sort of buckle down and use the pen tool all the time, and it gives me exactly what I want. That's why.
Patty asks if you have Photoshop technique tutorials that they can view. She says you're so thorough and such a perfectionist, and she'd love to learn more.
Thank you, Patty. I have a couple of DVDs out. You can get them directly through my website, jimzuckerman.com. They were made, however, when CS4 was the latest version, but to be honest, they are exactly applicable to today, to Photoshop CS5, 6, or CC. The technique is exactly the same. At some point, Adobe went from when you would paste a picture in, it used to be edit paste into, and then they made it edit paste special paste into, but beside that, everything I'm showing you now, which works with Photoshop CC, the latest version, works with CS4, 5, and 6. So there's 2 Photoshop DVDs available on my website, and I'm coming out again on my website with soon, with hopefully by the first of the year, a new online Photoshop course in post-processing, which will address all kinds of issues, how to make good pictures great and not so good pictures really good.
Great, well, thank you. Okay, let's see. Tina Marie has a question, and she actually asked this a bit ago, and I missed it. But on the picture of the car with the cliff, she said, how do you address the images in the Chrome not matching the new background?
Well, let me bring up the finished product. Well, see, the Chrome reflects the grass in front. The Chrome does not reflect in the background because it's facing the wrong direction. Now, you could have problems in the Chrome with reflections, like people or other cars. Other cars, you know, it depends how bad they are. Like, okay, here, I blew this up, and there's nothing terrible except this red. You know, if you want to get really, really picky, you could just clone the clone tool, just clone that out, like right there. So you could do that, but the Chrome faces me as I photograph. Well, here, you know what? Look at this thing here. Not sure what that is. It might be the leg of my tripod. Not sure. Here's the foot of somebody. So you know, you could definitely here. I could take the grass from over here, clone that leg out. It's reflected up here as well. So that's how you would address that. I should actually do a whole webinar on just the clone tool because it has tremendous potential and it can be used in a lot of different ways. But anyway, so the Chrome is only going to reflect, you know, as the camera sees it, not what's in back of the car.
Great, thank you. Let's see. Oh, Veronica asks if you could show the first tree that you did next to the second image that you did with the gradient tool. I think she wants to see them side by side.
Oh, okay. So here they're right here. I use a different sky. I'll blow it up so you can compare the edges. This is the one that I consider not good, and this is the one that is exactly like the camera original shows. You see the difference? The difference isn't huge, but it's enough to annoy me.
Great, thank you. Let's see now. Do we have any more questions? Oh, and you know what? Linda said, she actually said, I see matching light direction is important as well.
Well, it is. I mean, on an overcast day, the lighting is coming from above. But even with a cloud cover, there can be an area of the sky that's brighter. Let's say, you know, at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a overcast day, if the overcast is fairly thin, then the western sky will be brighter than the eastern sky, and so that will give you a direction thing. When it comes to sunlight, direct sunlight, this first picture I showed you, the Mercedes, the car is being lit. Well, you can see the shadow here. It's coming from the right side, but basically from the front, and the mountains are being lit basically from the front too. So yes, the direction is very important.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any more questions? I think we're just about out of questions, actually. So
I just wanted to mention again, Joanne, you had mentioned earlier that if anybody wants to sign up for my free e-magazine, it comes out once a month, and you can sign up on the homepage of my website, jimzuckerman.com, and I talk about Photoshop and photography, and it promotes the tours and workshops that I give. So I get a lot of compliments on it. So like I said, it's free, and I think you'll enjoy it if you enjoyed this webinar.
all right, great. Well, we definitely enjoyed the webinar. So, okay, well, thank you, everyone, for your great questions. And thank you, Jim, so much for taking the time to present today. See, a recording of today's webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/photobiz. Also, be sure to check our blog and watch your email for updates about future webinars. The next scheduled webinar will be 3 Invaluable Marketing Lessons for Photographers with Sarah Petty on November 12th. But keep an eye on your email or on the blog. We have some neat things coming up. So thank you again, Jim. We really appreciate you taking the time with us today. That concludes this episode. That concludes this episode of PhotoBiz Live. Have a great day, everyone.